What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Tech Backstage. My name is Eddie Hudson, here with my co-host Tulio Siragusa and our guest for today, Rohin Parkar, who's the CEO at Spintly. Rohin, how you doing?
Great, Eddie, and nice to meet you, Tulio, again. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, Tulio, how you doing?
Doing great.
Good, man.
It's Friday.
It's Friday, man. Yeah, I'm excited. Cool. Good stuff. Well, let's jump into it. Rohin, you're CEO of a company called Spintly, hardware access control. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and, how you ended up starting Spintly?
Hey, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this show. So we started Spintly back in 2018. My background is a hardware engineer. I started off my career in Motorola, developing base stations for cellular communications. I then moved to Nokia, building base stations. So I moved from 2G, building 2G technologies to 4G LTE technologies. Also worked at a startup building 5G radios. So basically, wireless technology has been my background. I moved to Silicon Valley, worked for Broadcom for quite some time. I almost worked in the industry for about 17 years before me and my co-founder decided to get together and start Spintly in 2018, right? So we put together all our wireless experience, and I've decided, hey, we need to change a few things which are happening in the building automation space, and we came up with a wireless mesh platform for building automation, and we built a use case out of it, which is access control. So we're the world's first fully wireless mesh-based access control platform. We've been in business for about 4 years, growing pretty fast.
Awesome. For those listeners who aren't 100% familiar with it, could you maybe just give a quick rundown of what mesh-based technology is?
Yes. So in any building environment or any environment, you have a bunch of devices, right? Sensors or nodes, which need to send data to a server or to a cloud, right? Typically, it has been you plug in a LAN cable in every device and you pull that data into the cloud, right? That's the best way. With Wi-Fi, again, you put wireless connectivity in the device, but it's still not mesh. Every Wi-Fi node has to connect to a router, right? The the beauty of mesh is that these sensors help each other send data, right? So they collect data and they send data through these sensors across the network. So it's a self-growing mesh network, right? So it's very cost effective because you're not running wires, cables, and a lot of these sensors run on batteries. So they're truly wireless.
And like you said, each device in the network can actually help transfer data. I think, like, thinking of like a popular example of this, like the Apple AirTags kind of work in a similar way, right? I mean, I don't know if it's exactly mesh-based technology, but that's the idea, right? You have the AirTags, and any phone within the actual Apple network can help track a single AirTag.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a mesh network. I don't know exactly how they do it, but I know I think it's public information. They probably use a technology called UWB, which is ultra wideband, to kind of get a signal from the tag. So any iPhone in the world can receive that signal and send it to the cloud, and they use some triangulation, I guess, to uh, locate the GPS coordinate of the device, right?
Very cool.
But yeah, it's kind of devices helping each other.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I love the idea of it not being connected to a cable or necessarily to a Wi-Fi. You're actually setting up a network that's almost self-dependent, right? That allows other devices on the network to, like you said, help it kind of self-expand, right?
Yes, so it's called a self-healing network, right? So even if a node goes down, doesn't matter. It kind of heals itself and finds another path. So primarily there are two technologies which we use. One is Bluetooth mesh, and the second one is Thread. Thread is a very popular technology which was developed by Nest when Nest came out, and Google bought Nest, and now Thread has become an interoperable standard for IoT, for home IoT, and then we expect it to expand into commercial spaces as well.
Interesting.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, speaking of technology, a lot of advancements have made this possible today. What would you say are the key things that made it possible? We know accessibility to connectivity is key. We've talked about that. Advancements in 5G and LTE have made that possible. But also, what about the software required behind it? What are some of the things that um, have made this possible from an embedded software device point of view, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a great question. So typically, hardware and processing power used to come at premium, right? Like uh, every device couldn't have the best processor, the highest memory, right? So if you look at a microwave oven, it is just running some basic microcontroller code, right? You can just press a button and it'll do some stuff, right? But today, processing power is pretty cheap. Memories are cheap, so pretty much every device can be a computer in itself, right? So it can run an OS. So that's the shift, right? So devices which were kind of dumb have become much more smarter. So you can push the computation right at the device level, so they can make their own decisions because they have memory, they can understand stuff, right? Eventually, I mean, they can probably be able to do AI and ML at the device level, right? Instead of pushing it to the edge or the cloud, right? So I think that's the shift which is happening. The devices are getting smarter and smarter.
Yeah.
And then what about the software itself? I know, for example, a lot of embedded device or IoT devices use Golang as a standard. 10 years ago, I think Go only represented about 4% of the global technology stack on the software side, but it's now up to like 12%, and it's exponentially growing. Um, is that some of the things you guys are using to make this possible? Do you think that more and more as time goes by, that separation that has existed between we're a hardware company, we're a software company is going away? What's sort of driving the demand for that in your opinion?
Yeah, we use Golang in our platform, definitely. And the difference between the separation between hardware and software is kind of blurring already, right? Where before it was like software can run only on a machine, right? Now devices can have a stripped down version of an OS running on it, right? And you pretty much can write software on the device just like any developer. So developers don't have to really worry about the hardware. Before writing a microcontroller code, you need to really understand the hardware, right? For a small device. Today, it's you can abstract it out, right? That's the power of software, pushing software at the device level.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so I want to circle back too really quick. So at its core, Spintly is an IoT company. It's Internet of Things company, right? And let's talk a little bit about how that's actually changing our day-to-day lives. I think, for me, it's actually been kind of a game changer. Being able to have wireless entry at my front door, being able to have lights connected to my cell phone, and you brought up Nest earlier. But one of the things, like, how is IoT changing like kind of our day-to-day lives? How is it how do you see it being embedded into the fabric of just being around, just being alive?
Yeah. So it's more about how your surroundings can adapt to you without you having to do anything, right? That's where we're headed, right? You walk to the door should just open for you because you're walking to the door, right? So there is a concept of ambient computing which is getting popularized. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's like computing all around you, right? So there is no reason for the garage not to open when you just drive close to it, right? It's basically your phone knows your coordinates. It's kind of knowing you're driving to a home, right? And you can have a couple of other sensors which is detecting a Bluetooth signal from your phone, and the garage just opens for you, right? It's just magical, right? And that's where we're headed, right? It's computing all around you, right? And that's only possible through IoT, um, location, and other forms of technology like devices on your hand, like smartwatches and smartphones, being able to share information in a secure way and giving you that experience, right, without compromising privacy and security.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I think that's huge, right? I think that's key. What you just said right there, not compromising security and privacy, right? Because like my phone's my car key right now, and if it doesn't work well and it's not secure, somebody can just walk up and steal your car, or they can walk up to your front door and they
Yeah.
can they can just walk into your house. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys can make sure, because you guys are access control at the end of the day, that is
Secure.
the fundamental base of what you guys do, is it's security, right? So talk to me a little bit about how you guys um how you build security into your product, and how you make sure that it's a product that that
Yeah.
can't be hacked, or somebody can get into.
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about our journey here, how we really started access control, right, as a business. We come from wireless background, and we got exposed to access control in 2018, early 2018, and we were surprised when we saw panels and wires running from the readers to the panels, and the huge amount of hardware which was being used. And we we kind of looked at, hey, Nest is doing completely wireless stuff, and we were exposed to Thread and Bluetooth Mesh, and we kind of put together a platform which can completely eliminate panels and wiring, right? That was the original thought, and we kind of did some deployments with readers having connectivity in them and having mesh network. And it really started resonating with the customers and the ecosystem partners that it can eliminate 70% of the cost in access control, right? And yeah, obviously, then the next question was, is it secure? Is it safe? Is the wireless mesh network safe? Can my phone be hacked? Can people use their phone to hack into the device and things like that, right? So we use standard encryption methods, security keys at different levels, network level key, device level key, uh, and the messages are encrypted, right? So it's not possible to hack into this system. Uh, at the base of it, I mean, I think there is nothing called as absolute security, right?
Right.
Things do get hacked, right? You can make it as tight as possible, but if somebody somehow gets hold of the key through,
Yeah.
through it can be hacked. So I wouldn't say that there is a system which is unhackable out there, but it
Right.
can be as difficult as possible. If you use 256-bit encryption, it's pretty difficult to get in.
Yeah. I mean, someone takes your key, you have to change the lock. Someone takes some kind of a digital device, you can change the encryption or the code. You can actually lock someone out. So technically, it's safer to do it digitally, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm just, it's interesting. I can't help but think about all these companies that have been created that provided wireline based, like security system, for example, or access controls to buildings. And the smaller companies or smaller businesses were kind of locked out of the ability to have access to that because the cost basis is too high. I mean, it's now possible that you can install your own alarm system or access control system as an individual in your own home. Everything is easily set up. My entire home is a smart home. Used to be, 10, 15 years ago, you'd have to spend over $100,000 to make your house a smart home. Now you have everything you can do yourself. So is that the direction that this kind of technology is going, where you don't need some third party professional installation, where it can easily be done by anyone? Is that what's driving success for organizations such as yourself? Or do you still have dependency on third party contractors to do installations? How's that coming along, and where do you see the future going as it relates to that?
Yeah. Absolutely, you said it right. I mean, labor cost is pretty high in this country and in any developed country, right? And getting people to do install stuff is pretty difficult. I mean, there are no people out available to do this kind of work. And technology is there where you don't need people to come in to install stuff. You can make it DIY pretty much, right? People should be able to install their own stuff, and that is what is driving the adoption, right? It's already showing its effect in homes, where people are buying their own things. They're buying their own locks, them on the door, buying their own cameras, installing them, and setting it. Like, that's what Nest did, starting with the thermostat, right? They just replaced the old thermostat which was there and put a new one which connected with a connected thermostat, right? And that started the journey of having more and more devices. And the same thing is going to happen in the commercial space. Like if you go in any commercial space, there's a huge network of infrastructure for uh, air conditioning, lighting, access control, security, which gets laid down, right? And it's kind of you can call it a mafia kind of thing, right? So there are these manufacturers who make stuff, and there are the partners, and there are integrators, and it's just there. It's pretty hard to break, right? So yeah, I mean, it's kind of disruption which you try to bring in the industry, but you kind of have to balance it out. You don't want to completely alienate the
Mm.
integrators, right? Because they know a lot in the industry, right? So you still need installers to kind of set up these devices. But the bottom line is that the customer shouldn't be paying 10 times more for a solution which could be very cheap.
It's interesting. It begs the question. We often hear the term software is eating the world. But what is actually driving all this? Is it a self-service movement or is it software? One is enabling the other, and the other one is possible because of the other. It's kind of an interesting thing. It started with the travel industry where everything moved online, so we will all turn into employees. Where we would doing our own bookings. I mean, that's what self-service is. Companies figured out how to turn all of us into their employees, and we happily do it because self-service is consistent service because you're doing it yourself, right? So do you think that the desire for more autonomy, more empowerment is driving a lot of these initiatives in this direction? What's the underlying driver? Is it that we just want to have better control and dictate our own future, and that's what's making some of these things successful? Or do you think that the push in this direction is allowing people to step into the DUI space? What do you think? It's a chicken before the egg kind of a thing. What are your thoughts in terms of what you're seeing? What's driving this?
I think it's we like control, right? People like control. I mean, in general, if you could do it yourself without much of a hassle, you would do it. And obviously, you would save money by doing it yourself, right? I mean, if you
Right.
can save money, why wouldn't you do it, right? If I could change my own engine oil, I could do it, but I know it's difficult for me to do it. But a lot of people still do it. But if a car comes in with a new method of changing oil, everybody would love to do it, right? Hey, I just put new oil and it's done. You don't have to go underneath the car, right? That's the only resistance point, right?
Right.
I change my wiper blades. I don't have to take it in because it's very easy to change, right? So people probably like to do stuff on their own as long as it is easy and they can save money by doing so. So that's the driver, I think, right? If you
Yeah.
push controlling the users, they'll take it.
So how do you balance that, right? Because it's always tempting to offer a lot of features and functionality, which showcases the ability of a product versus the usability, the ease of use, the adoption comes from that, right? Adoption is always about ease of use. How do you guys balance that out? And when clients of yours come and say, "Hey, can it do this? Can it do that?" How do you push back to say, "Well, do you really need all that stuff?" What are you discovering as finding that balance between features and usability, for adoption purposes?
Yeah, so this is all about reading between the lines, right? Customers
Mm.
may tell you a bunch of stuff. I mean, Steve Jobs says that, right? He said that always. You build the product before the customer knows that they want it, right? It's kind of reading between the lines of when the customer says something. There's a saying, if you had asked a person, what you if Henry Ford would have asked a person, what would you want, and they would have said, I want a faster horse, right? But Henry Ford built a car because he knew that they want to move faster, right? So that's the kind of strategy you would apply, right? What is the core problem, right? They are
Mm.
telling me, I want this, but they're telling that because they have this problem, like, and so now you use your engineering skills or whatever user experience thought process and solve the problem effectively for them. How you solve it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah, I mean, this conversation's opening my mind to a lot of possibilities. Sometimes we think everything's been thought of in terms of digitization, but there's so many things from the Industrial Revolution that have yet to be made easier, right? Even the simple thing, like you said, what about reinventing the way a car is made, where the oil change can be done a lot easier, like some technology that allows you to plug and play, the ability to do that yourself. I mean, there's so many things that could be simplified and digitized, if you will. So I'm curious, being in this space, what are some of the trends you're seeing? Are you seeing more of a interest in finding ways to modernize some of the old industrial ways of doing things? What kind of time frame are we looking at where we get to that place where we don't need a service company to take care of things that can be designed and it's basically taken care of automatically? What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, it takes time for an industry to move from what they're doing, entire industry, to something new, right? It starts with a disruption, and eventually it moves towards standardization, right? So uh, there are so many companies building stuff, and everybody can be building their own thing. So it comes to how do these things talk to each other, say, become interoperable, right? For example, in electric cars, there should be standardization how you charge the car, right? You want the same kind of a connector or a plug. Or in the wireless world today, it's like the devices should understand each other's language, right? So it starts with a disruption, but for it to become mass adoption, then the industry is to come together and say that, hey, let's standardize this. This is great stuff. How do we make it mainstream, right? So we part of bodies like Fred Group. Fred Group is a member-driven organization. Companies like Google, Apple, and others are part of it. And there is an effort to standardize the communication between IoT devices, right? So they can understand each other. So now anybody can make a thread-enabled device. Say, for example, we make thread-enabled access control reader, and as long as other company makes another reader with thread, they'll talk to each other, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of democratizes use the technology which you are trying to propagate.
We got some interesting comments from one of our viewers, Justin Witt, about a lot of companies are pushing in this direction, right? And then there's those who are against it, that are not supporting it for obvious reason. And it reminds me also, from a car manufacturing point of view, comment that Elon Musk made on an interview where he said, he was asked, how do you feel about competition in the EV space? And he was like, I welcome it. I want the competition, because ultimately it's about getting to solving a bigger problem, which is the dependency on fossil fuels. So some companies sacrificing the desire of consumers and people, which is to have more automation, more self-service, more empowerment, for the sake of profits? And how long do you think that'll last?
Yeah,
I know it's a big question. It's a big loaded question.
A lot to unpack right there. Yeah.
So I think that's the nature of the industry, right? Industries don't change until something becomes a threat. I mean, it happens time and again, right? If you look at auto industry, yeah, probably Ford mocked Tesla when they launched the first electric vehicle, and Nokia mocked Apple when Apple launched the first touchscreen phone, and it happens over and over again, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the way industry behaves. The bigger players in the market realize that the change later, and then they adopt it eventually. And that's what's going to happen in every space, even in the IoT space.
Yeah, and another follow-up. Thanks, Justin, for participating, by the way. We love comments. If you guys post comments wherever you're watching us, we will see them. So just any questions you have, to post them, we will see them. I love his final point, which is like it's control of the customer, which is something you said too. I guess it comes down to understanding what the customer wants, because that's how you maintain control of that relationship, is delivering on what they want. So what's next for you guys? We're coming up in the final segment of our show. What's next for Spintly? You started with a particular set of solutions. What are your eyes on in terms of that crossing the chasm point? What's the thinking?
Yeah, so we've done pretty well in access control. We started getting more and more customers. So the goal is to make wireless access control a standard, so that that's the way access control should be done. And eventually, we are moving towards smart building space, where uh, any building consists of specifically few systems like access control, HVAC control, lighting control. All these are very hardware intensive solutions, and we basically focused on making them software centric solutions, right? Where the intelligence can be on the cloud or on the edge or in the devices running them, right? So that's the long term vision. And to the point of this whole topic of a journey of a hardware startup, hardware becomes one of the key elements of being able to make this happen, right? You just need one device which has the connectivity and the intelligence and capability to be a part of that network, right? So I think hardware is not something which is a must to. It comes out of the necessity of solving a problem, pretty much.
Yeah, you know what I love about companies like yourself? You are redefining what the user experience needs to look like, right? It's not just it's how you interact with various things, not just technology, but even basic things like the entrance to your door, or your garage opener, your air conditioning, your vehicle, etc. And so I guess the winners will be those organizations who create a more seamless, more humanized approach to that interaction that doesn't require a tremendous amount of work or complexities to figure it out. Like I love Alexa, and I can program everything, but it takes time to do all that programming. It's, so someone coming out of the gate may not get the same functionality day one. So what about like voice interface? Do you think some of these embedded solutions will also be voice enabled? Is that the possible future on how you make changes? How do you facilitate that without needing to go in and programming? Do you think that will have some two-way interaction with the end user, where they can talk to a device and say, I want you to do the following, I want you to perform the following tasks in this time frame? What are your thoughts? Are you guys experimenting with voice as a user experience interface?
So we as a company are not experimenting with voice as such, because we go in a commercial space, B2B kind of a solution. I
Right.
think voice is going to play big roles in homes to start with, in more of private settings where you're at home and you say, "Hey Alexa, turn on the light." That's already happening. People are doing it every day. But I think whatever makes sense, right? Whatever makes the life easy for the user, right?
Right.
So if you're driving, you definitely wouldn't want to type, right? If you could just reply to a message saying that, hey, the message, and it's CarPlay does it already, right? The message pops up on your screen and say, yeah, I want to respond, and you just talk, and the response goes. It, it's solving your problem, right? I mean, whatever makes sense,
Right.
right?
Very
Yep.
cool.
I was just gonna, we're like Tulio was just saying, we're coming up on time here. But one of the things that I was just gonna kind of say as a closing final thought, especially as a software engineer myself, I think like hardware is such a crucial part of our technology infrastructure today. But a lot of times it doesn't get the amount of attention that it deserves, right? If you think about it, like everybody's always talking about the software and the applications, but like we still have to have hardware to write software, and we need software to we need hardware to operate software. And I think a lot of times hardware is kind of the unspoken part of the actual underlying technology architecture that we have. And I think that everybody's always so focused on software startups, but like hardware startups like Spintly are crucial to the future of the technology roadmap, not just for software but for technology as it integrates into our lives as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Hardware is the key to create that user experience. That's the last point where the user interacts with something, right? And the user experience can be only created by innovating on the hardware side and then using software to create that experience, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a beautiful marriage, the form and the function coming together, and those two things do impact the user experience and adoption rate. So just giving us a lot to think about. Thank you for that. A lot of ideas. Maybe there'll be some opportunities from people watching to expand the scope of what companies are doing, just software, and start thinking about form factors too and how that comes together. So thanks for being with us. Just stay with us as we go off the air in just a second. We have a big lineup next week. I'm going to ask our producer to quickly announce what we got coming up next week, and then we'll wish everyone a nice weekend. Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Tulio. And of course, I'll be happy to tell you what's coming next. So next Tuesday, we're going to be speaking with Neil Cross, the co-founder at Peppermint Innovation. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be speaking with Colby Tunick, I hope I got it right, the CEO of Refocus AI. Then on Thursday, we're going to be talking to Paul Shostak from Open World Labs. These are going to be design thinking themed shows, by the way. And finally, on Friday, we're going to be speaking with Robin Zander, the CEO of Zander Media. So as you can see, we have a full week ahead. I look forward to it, and I hope you do too. Meet us right here on Tech Backstage next week at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you. And of course, thanks, Rohin, Eddie, and Tulio.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks, Rowan. Bye, guys.